Now that we've started our plant layout, I'm going to open up a more completed one. And this one also has component structure editor components in it. In other words, we're creating a virtual assembly before we ever start creating files on disk. And what we can do is populate this based on a text file where we have all the different kind of components that go in a plant specified, and we can just simply select the one that we want. In this case, it's going to be a boiler assembly, and add it to the structure of the assembly. Next, we may want to add the boiler frame. And once we add the boiler frame, you can see it was added to the top level, but we can quickly fix that just by drag and drop, moving the boiler frame actually into a boiler subassembly. And if we select the boiler assembly, we can add components directly to it. In this case, we want to add multiple pumps. We'll just continue to build up this subassembly with components from the component structure editor. You can also add real components to this assembly. Solid Edge has the ability to open up an assembly and create a virtual sketch, a component sketch inside of that part, and save it. And so when you add that real component to the structure editor, you can see that it has a sketch assigned to it. And that's what that icon means. So there we've added two components that are already on disk to our virtual assembly as we're building this up. The next step then is to actually start creating some sketches of where all these components are going to be inside the assembly. Notice that in the sketch we had layer control. We still have that layer control. So in this case, what we want to do is turn off the rafter layer, and we're going to start basically laying out where that boiler assembly is going to live inside of the plant. So to specify the frame, I'm just going to use sketching tools inside of Solid Edge. I'm going to use the rectangle command. And as we showed you in the first part of the demonstration, we can specify the exact size. You can also enable the functionality in Solid Edge to automatically dimension that sketch as it's placed. Then all we'll need to do is add dimensions to specify the distance from the wall sections in the plant layout. So our distance between dimension can be used to align dimensions to an existing dimension, as you see here. So once we have that sketch, we need to assign that to a component in the structure editor. So the boiler frame is what this sketch is going to be representing. So we just select the geometry, and we can specify an origin and a direction for that definition. The next thing we want to do is sketch a pump. So we're going to use a different tool, creating a rectangle by 2 points. Just like we did with the frame, we're going to edit the definition. We're going to assign that rectangle to the pump. We'll specify the origin and the direction. Now where you see this is really important is when we want to add another pump, we simply say position virtual component because it already has a sketch assigned to it. And you can see that origin point is what is used. Just like when we brought in blocks, you have those same key in values of A and S to rotate the block into position. The next component that we want to create is the pump station. And here you can see we're using alignment tools to align the back of the pump station with the back of the pump. Again, with the same process, we'll assign the sketch to the pump station. The final components are the vertical tanks. We're just going to use the circle to represent the vertical tank. Now as we assign that sketch, we're going to pick up the center point, and we're going to use the silhouette point for the direction of the x-axis. And now we can again just position that virtual component because it has a sketch already assigned to it. So now we've completely laid out all the components in the boiler assembly that we added during the component structure editor portion of the demonstration. Now we're going to move to the upper level of the layout, which is another sketch inside the assembly. So we're just going to edit that. And what we're going to add here is the real components. Remember, I said that they have a virtual component sketch already existing in those files, and so when I drag that out into the graphics area, that is what we're going to see, is that sketch that was created from the real components. So here we can precisely pick up the center of the arc to precisionally place that turntable. Again, using the A or the S, we'll rotate the next conveyor section in position, and we're going to align it to the center of that turntable. Solid Edge has the ability to create a measurement between two parts, and what's nice about this is it works just like the Smart Dimension tool, only it just doesn't place the dimension. So we can see what that value is, but when we click, it disappears. It doesn't actually build the dimension. And so now we know that we have enough room for a platform. This platform is a real assembly, real subassembly. You can see we can even place this in the sketch environment. Here we're telling Solid Edge that the sketch is going to be driving the location of the platform. Using peer edges, we'll turn those on so that we can pick up the endpoint of the conveyor section in the real 3D subassembly and align that to a key point on the sketch. Here we're just connecting the endpoints. One more connection will get it rotated in the proper position. So this gets us lined up in the X and Y direction. However, we also want to align it in the Z direction. We want to put the bottom of the platform on the sketch plane. So we'll just use the assemble command, which will allow us to pick the bottom face and mate it to the sketch plane, and you can see it moves directly into position. So now that we have everything laid out the way that we want and all of the sketches are assigned to components, what we want to do is publish this assembly. We're going to specify a directory or a folder where to put any new components, where to place those. We're going to put that in a new components folder. So this is any parts that do not have a 3D file associated with it. Any parts that have a 3D file associated with it will automatically get replaced with the real components. So this is a very quick and easy way to lay out a plant layout in a virtual way and then start adding all the components one by one, or as a whole group here. You can see that it added all of those 3D models that were assigned to those component sketches. So what we want to do now is we want to add an OEM table. It's a precision table that we already have created. So we're going to go find it in our folder structure, and you'll notice that this is a simplified assembly. And we can actually mate and align the faces of that precision table to our sketch elements. This is going to allow us to precisely place this 3D model relative to the sketch. Now this is fully associative to the sketch, so that if that sketch changes, that model is going to move based on those assembly relationships. So here we're going to edit the sketch, change the dimension for the sketch, and you're going to notice that that model will react to that change based on that relationship. Now you can see we need another small section of conveyor, and so what we're going to do is pick up the conveyor section from this side of the subassembly, and using our powerful steering wheel tool, we're going to actually copy this to the other end of the precision table. Steering wheel is a very powerful tool to use for copying and moving components. Here we're copying it to the endpoint, and then again using the steering wheel we can rotate it into position. So you can see how quickly we can duplicate things in the assembly. Now this is a simplified assembly. The OEM table is a simplified assembly, and if we want to see what it looks like in the design state, it's just an option in the pull-down menu, or in the pop-up menu, I should say. So here we're going to tell Solid Edge that we want to see the precision assembly, or the detailed assembly, and also the design parts. So here you can see more detail in this assembly. However, in the overall scheme of things, we don't really need to see all that detail, and we can save resources, graphic resources and memory, by showing it in its simplified state, removing some of the detail, which makes it much more performant. Now this area with the coordinate systems is the boiler, and this again, it was not a real component, it was not created yet. However, we do have a subassembly that we can replace it with. There is a boiler subassembly in another folder, and we're just simply going to replace the one that we created virtually with the real subassembly. So here you can see we have it in position. So you can see how quickly you can go from just the layout of components using the virtual assembly structure and using the virtual components, and quickly build up an assembly of an entire plant layout. Zones help us to concentrate on specific areas of our assembly. The next area that we're going to look at is that boiler unit. We have a boiler room, and we're going to hide some components. We're going to hide the walls, and the next part of the demonstration is going to be showing piping. Solid Edge has a specific environment for piping.